The Talmud, that central book, if you will, 26 tractates of literature from our rabbis, is perhaps the most important collection of teachings that make up the Judaism that we practice today. The Talmud speaks a lot about women. After all, the book was written by men. The Talmud speaks a lot about women, but talks very little about any woman in particular. The exception to that may be a woman named Bruriah. Now, Bruriah was the wife of Rabbi Meir, one of the great scholars, one of the great sages of rabbinic history. But Bruriah was known for more than just being Rabbi Meir's wife. She was known as being a scholar in her own right. She was known as being a real tzaddikus, a real righteous woman, both for her commitment to Torah learning, but also in the way that she led her life, and even more so in the way she supported her husband, Rabbi Meir, so that they may perpetuate Judaism so he could be a real teacher for the Jewish people. And so there is a midrash that comes from a time contemporaneous to the Talmud that tells us that Bruriah was the learned and compassionate wife of Rabbi Meir. While Rabbi Meir was teaching on a Shabbat afternoon, both of his sons died from the plague that was affecting their city. Bruriah spent the entire afternoon wondering how she was going to break the news to her husband, Rabbi Meir. And so the Midrash tells us that when Rabbi Meir returned home, he asked his wife, "Where are our sons?" So she thought for a moment. And as it was late on Shabbat, she handed him the cup of Kiddush for Havdalah. And he said the blessing. He looked at her again and said, "Where are the boys?" And she handed him the spice box. And he said the blessing over the spices. He turned to her again and said, "Where are the kids?" And she handed him the candle for Havdalah. And sure enough, he asked one more time, "Where are our sons?" And she handed him the Kiddush cup and the candle once again that he may conclude Havdalah. One more time, Rabbi Meir looked to his wife and said, "Where are our boys?" And so she prepared for him a full meal and brought him the food, and he ate. And when he had finished eating, Bruriah said to her husband, "My teacher," because after all, that's how all Rebbitzins address their husbands who are rabbis. When he had finished eating, Bruriah said to her husband, "My teacher, I have a question. A while ago, a man came and deposited something precious in my keeping. Now he has come back to claim what he has left. Shall I return it to him or not?" Rabbi Meir responded, "Is not one who holds the deposit required to return it to its owner?" So she took his hand into hers, and she led him to where their two children lay. Rabbi Meir began to weep, crying, "My sons, my sons." His wife comforted him. "Adonai natan v'Adonai lekach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach." God has given. God has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. We all know the reality that life is not really the precious gift we describe it to be, but really our loved ones, our parents, our children, our siblings, our spouses are in so many ways on loan to us. When it comes time for the author of life to take back that which is his, we have to give up those we love, whether we are ready to or not. We recognize the finitude of our own lives as human. At the same time, we understand that the author of life, the one who loans us our loved ones but for a few years, the author of life, God, is infinite. There is no beginning and end to God, and we recognize the stark contrast between our own finitude and God's infinity. but where the infinity and that which is finite links up is in what we celebrate on this holiday of Shavuot. This is, after all, Zman Matan Toratenu. This is the season of the gift of the Torah. This is when we celebrate God giving us that Torah on Sinai. The Torah, the wedding ring that exists between God as one spouse and the people Israel as the other spouse, that wedding ring, the love, that symbol of the relationship between God and the Jewish people. That too is infinite. The Torah, almost 4,000 years old, has survived longer than the great Assyrians, the mighty Persians, the bold Babylonians, and the strength of the Greeks. That Torah, the symbol of the love between God and the Jewish people, has survived the Cossacks, has survived the pogroms, has survived even the Holocaust. Like God, that love, that symbol of the love, the Torah, the gift that God gives to us, is infinite. And so we gather at this Yizkor hour mindful of our own mortality, but at the same time in celebration that God's love for us is infinite. So the issue that I'll take with Brueria is that in some ways we do have to return those we love to the author of life. But the rabbis of our tradition teach us that while the body, the house guarding the soul, the body is that which is finite, the soul, like God, is infinite, is eternal. The soul, like the Torah that we give thanks for on this holiday of Shavuot, the soul lives on forever. So when we gather at the Yizkor hour, and in fact, whenever we gather at Shul to honor Toratenu, to honor our Torah, we find the link between the finite and the infinite. We find the connection between that which is mortal and that which is eternal. And though so many of us have lost those closest to us, as we gather today in memory of parents, siblings, spouses, or God forbid, children, we find somehow that nexus between mortality and infinity, that connection point between the past, the future, and today. As we gather at this Yizkor hour, mindful that we had to return that which was but on loan to us, we give thanks for the presence of their lives in our own lives. And we seek to find a connection, an eternal connection to those we've lost, so that their souls are forever intertwined with ours. We turn now to the Yizkor service.